We just passed our short.
Okay, everybody, January 25th, 2024, Board of Selectmen meeting is, for the town of Kennebunkport, is now started at 6 o'clock. Call to order. I'll entertain a motion to approve the January 11th and the January 14th Selectmen meeting minutes.
So moved.
I would like to say that the January 14th meeting was a special meeting where we got on the bus and drove around to witness the damage caused by the storm. So it was, but there was public members were there as well. So I'll entertain a motion to approve both.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Okay, good, 5-0. Okay, this is the public forum. It's an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda. Anybody in the audience? No? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on. Consider renewal liquor license for Shea Rosa LLC, doing business as Shea Rosa Bistro, located on Cross Street and Union Street in Building D. The staff has approved that.
So
And-
moved.
Okay, second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay?
I'm recusing myself.
Okay, so the next one is for the rum line, where Sheila will have to recuse herself. She did. On her own. So consider renewal liquor license and special amusement permit for the Rum Line Motor Lodge, doing business as a Rum Line Resort located at 41 Turbot's Creek Road, and that was also approved by the staff.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay?
Congratulations.
All five.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We can drink.
We're in business.
See you.
And the next order of business is the presentation of the audit for fiscal year 2023 by Casey Leonard from RKO.
And we're going to have our finance director give some opening comments.
Sure. So we had our audit back, our fiscal year '23 audit took place in October with the completion around January. It went extremely well. Due to our hardworking staff throughout all the departments, our revenues came in over budget and our expenditures were falling under budget. And overall, there were no significant findings. So although we had a few minor findings, which would have been a credit card policy that we are in the process of updating right now, so we'll put that into place. We also had our Uniform Guidance Procurement Standards, which is a policy regarding federal grant funds. And we're also in the process of updating our purchasing policy, and we're going to have a section of our purchasing policy to cover that standard to make sure that we're in compliance with the federal government. And then our last minor finding was the segregation of duties, which with our small town and our small finance department, we have 1 full-time and 2 part-time employees, that we do our best to safeguard all of our duties. Like, for example, when we do our deposits in the morning, we have 2 people, whether it be in the finance or we pull someone from the other departments, to make sure that we have 2 people counting cash. 1 person will complete the deposit, and then the other person will scan the check, so we do have double duty for that. It's hard with, having a small department, so we do that. And then, so other than that, our audit went extremely well, and tonight we have Casey Leonard from RKO, who will do our presentation.
Hey, Casey.
Good
Welcome.
evening.
Welcome.
As Nicole said, the audit went very well this year, very smooth. We did our field work for the most part in October, wrapped things up in December. Report was dated December 29th, so we just finished, just about a month ago. I have a little presentation which I'm going to go through, and as I do so, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me at any point. The first graph here, if we could go to graph 1, the next page, we have a summary of the audit results. So just kind of an overview of the audit process and the financial statements. So in terms of the opinion on the financial statements, the town received an unmodified opinion, which means they are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or it was a clean opinion, which is exactly what you want to see. In addition to the financial statement audit in 2023, we performed 2 separate compliance audits. So first of all, we performed an audit in accordance with government auditing standards. It's what we commonly call a yellow book audit. And here we consider the town's internal controls over the financial reporting process. So we look at all the procedures that are in place that help to ensure that the year-end balances are materially correct. We also perform tests of the town's compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. And I'm glad to say that we didn't have any material weaknesses, nor did we have any significant deficiencies. We did have a few recommendations, which Nicole mentioned. You know, just to add to what Nicole said, segregation of duties really has to do with your small staff size. I'm sure this, I've only been doing the audit for 2 years, but I'm sure this comment's been here for many, many years. I would say 70 to 80% of our clients regularly receive this comment. You know, governments in the state of Maine usually run pretty thin. There's not a lot of bodies in your finance department, and there's not a lot of bodies in most towns or municipalities. And so this comment's, it's quite common. We recommend that board members, that management review financial information on a regular basis. It helps to mitigate some of the risks that I'm talking about. Nicole also mentioned the credit card policy. Sounds like you're working on that. And then in 2023, because the town expended more than $750,000 worth of federal grant proceeds, we performed an audit in accordance with uniform guidance. In the current year, the town expended about $1.4 million. And this is a program or project-specific audit. So in 2023, we tested the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Cluster. There was a finding, as Nicole mentioned, it was related to not having certain language in your procurement policy that you need to add, and it sounds like you're working on that right now. If we go to the next graph, we start to get into some of the financial results for the year. This first graph shows general fund balance. So if you take your total assets less your total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, you're left with the equity position of the fund balance for the town. And we take fund balance and we kind of carve it up into different categories. And I'm just briefly going to explain what's included in each one of those. So first of all, you have non-spendable fund balance. That represents resources which cannot be spent as they're not in a spendable form. Specifically, what we're talking about is inventory. Inventory can't be easily converted to cash, and so we put it into that non-spendable category. Then you have assigned and committed fund balance. That represents resources that are constrained by the town's intent to be used on specific things, on specific items. So these are amounts that the board is specifically setting aside. And in 2023, that included $200,000 set aside to balance the 2024 budget and about $680,000 set aside for carry forwards. And then unassigned fund balance is what remains after amounts are recognized in the other categories. It's essentially what's left over, and that equaled about $6,192,000 at June 30th, 2023. In total, fund balance increased by about $1,390,000 in 2023, and we're going to see some of the reasons why that happened on the next few graphs. On graph 4, we have general fund revenues, and this is a budget to actual comparison. In total, your revenues were about $880,000 over budget, so you received more than what was expected. Just going to mention briefly some of the larger variances. Excise taxes exceeded their budget by about $119,000 due to conservative budgeting. It's always difficult knowing who's going to buy that new car on a regular basis and what excise taxes are going to look like. So the town usually budgets for those amounts pretty conservatively. Intergovernmental revenues are over budget by about $139,000 due to greater than expected revenue sharing. The increased amount in revenue sharing was determined after the town had completed its budget. Charges for services were over budget by about $122,000, primarily due to greater than expected revenue from parking violations and Goose Rock's beach stickers. And interest earned was over budget by about $351,000 due to higher than expected rates of return. I think the town got together with their bank and tried to figure out ways to try and earn some more interest on idle cash, and so you're seeing the benefit of that here. Graph 5 shows general fund expenditures.
They might have questions as you go, Casey.
Oh, sure.
Lori looked at me because I looked up. So can we talk a little bit more about the interest earned? Did we do something? I mean, it's large. I mean, did we?
Part of the reason for the additional interest earned was because when we budgeted, you know, back at this time period, interest rates were low, remember? And then interest rates increased as time went on. Nicole worked with both our main bank, which is Camden, along with, we had some funds set aside with Northeast, and, we made them competitive against each other. And so certainly, we worked to make sure we had the greatest return, but I'd say a lot of that has to do with just interest rates
In general.
increased.
Yep, all right. Thank you.
Do you have anything else to add?
Nope, you did a great job.
Thank you, Nicole.
So for expenditures were about $2,262,000 under budget, so pretty significant amount. Again, some of the larger variances, general government expenditures were under budget by $1,010,000, and that was primarily due to lower than expected cost related to administration, as well as planning and development, and unneeded contingency and tax abatements. As part of the market adjustment performed in 2023, the town had budgeted for about $861,000 in abatements, but only about $72,000 were used. So a very large part of the variance is related to that. Public safety expenditures are under budget by $222,000, and that was primarily due to vacancies in the police department and communications. Public works expenditures are under budget by $140,000, primarily due to vacancies and lower than expected repair costs. Debt service expenditures are under budget by about $265,000 as the first payment of the 2022 radio bond was budgeted for in the fiscal year, but the first payment wasn't made until fiscal year '24, so there was a timing issue there. And committed funds were under budget by $519,000 as they're carried forward until they are expended on their intended use.
So those numbers they're accounted for, they're committed, obviously. So
Yeah, they are.
that isn't-
They are. Yeah, they just kind of get rolled.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Then graph 6 shows general fund unassigned fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. The town has a fund balance policy, and that's to maintain unassigned fund balance in the general fund at a minimum of 2 months of general fund expenditures, or 18%, measured on a basis consistent with generally accepted accounting principles. Any unassigned funds in excess of 18% of the target balance are to be transferred to capital reserve accounts. So when we do this calculation as of June 30th, 2023, that percentage equaled 26.89%. So obviously you're compliant with the 18% threshold, and it sounds as though, the board's in a position where you want to move some money over to capital reserves. And I think on your agenda, you actually have that tonight, so you're going to be talking about that shortly. And then the final two graphs are just pie charts for general fund expenditures. So just a different kind of graphical representation of your expenditures. When looking at 2023, you can see the three largest categories were education, or the transfer to RSU 21 at 49%, public safety at 13%, and general government at about 10%. No real large surprises there for any municipality, whether or not you have your own municipal school department or you're transferring money into a separate district. Usually education is anywhere between 40 and 60%. Beyond that, public safety at 13%, not surprising. And if you look at 2022, which is on the next page, pretty similar between the years. No huge variances usually, or for the most part, they're between 1% and 2% between the 2 years. So that was just kind of an overview of things. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
No, like I said earlier,
Very pleased.
Make sure you have your mic.
on the mic, okay. The audit report is really well put together, and there's more information that I can digest, but it's really explains a lot of the things that I had questioned about last year and this year. So
Great.
I think it's a great job.
Very good.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly. Is there anything else?
Okay. Anybody else? Questions?
I have no question.
Anybody
thank you.
in the audience? Questions? Anybody with their hands raised?
No hands raised.
No hands raised, okay.
Thanks, folks.
It would be great to get a motion to accept the
Okay,
audit.
okay. I'll entertain, okay, I didn't see that. I'll entertain a motion to accept the audit report.
So move. Second.
All those, all those in favor? Okay, thanks. Thanks for reminding me about that. I didn't realize we needed one.
Thank you.
Okay. Authorize the annual transfer to the capital reserve fund in accordance with the fund balance policy.
Yep, so according to our general fund balance policy, we are recommending that the board would authorize a transfer of 1.8 million to the capital projects fund for general capital improvements, which, so we have a balance as of June 30th, 23 of 1.1 million. We had committed funds for a boat launch and some pier funding for 1.5 million. So with this transfer of 1.8, it would leave a balance of 1.4 into our capital improvements fund balance.
Go ahead.
I just had a couple questions. So the 600,000 transfer for full year 24 budget, that was,
For the capital budget. So on your commitment sheet, it says transfer use of fund balance 200, and then it says transfer of capital reserve. And we put 600,000 of the capital reserve towards the capital projects.
okay. And then just a general question on procedure for, or process, I should say, not procedure, but process for Laura, you, Nicole, and the rest of the board is, you know, given what we don't know for expenditures, for what we just went through for the storm, do we move the money to capital now, or do we hold until we get a little bit more ground under our feet to understand what's going to happen in anything above budget for 2024? I didn't know if once we go to capital, then we're restricted to
No.
pure capital.
So well, any of the damages would fit in that category of capital, but really all you're doing is kind of creating a dividing line on your fund balance account. So you know what you need for normal, good fiscal consideration and anything that you might consider asking the town for approval to expend above that. So either side of this equation, we have no authority to expend these funds without town meeting approval. And so it's really just recognizing it on the capital side of the fund balance.
Okay, and so so just to make sure I understand, by putting it into the capital side of the fund balance, we're not going to restrict ourselves from anything that we might run into, some of these unknowns, because we believe that those are probably going to fall within the
I mean,
capital
the
definition.
board, according to the general fund balance policy, can take funds back on the other side if you wanted to.
Oh, okay.
But we have no authority to expend from either side without town
Okay,
meeting.
but we can move it back and forth.
Yep.
Okay, good, thank you. Did you know that?
I'll make a motion to transfer the funds of 1,403,000.
No, we want to do the 1.8.
You want to do the one, yeah, it's the 1.8.
1,810,871.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor? Okay, good. So done. Okay, so now we're going to get into the presentation of proposed June 2024 ordinance changes by Galen Weebly.
So as Galen's coming up, can I just make a comment that this was Nicole's first CAFR, that she did 100% on her own.
God.
Last year, between Denise and Nicole taking over, we paid $8,000 for the auditor to help us put this CAFR together.
Oh, wow.
And so I just want you to recognize the amount of work that goes into a CAFR. There are many finance directors across the state of Maine and bigger places who do not do a document of this nature.
Wow.
And we go above and beyond here to make sure we have good financial reporting for ourselves as well as the citizens. And that was a lot of work for Nicole as a new finance director, and I just want to give her kudos for that.
Kudos.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
And Galen, is this your first public appearance? If it's
No.
not, no, it's not. Okay,
Well,
good.
yeah.
He's
It's
well
the
known
second,
to us
yep.
now.
All right, but I don't know for the people at large. I know for us.
Where have you
Yes.
been?
But TV too? All right, as long as you've been on TV, then I won't introduce you. So,
Good evening, Select Board. My name is Galen Widley. I'm your Director of Planning and Development, and I'm here tonight to present to you LD 2003. So I shared with Lori, and she'll distribute. There's a nice illustration I just got hot off the presses today in Gray, Maine. I met with the state officials to help answer some additional questions for LD 2003. So the state legislation, I'll just give a broad brush overview, and I think this illustration really helps. There's 3 buckets to this law that we have to amend our land use code to address the affordable housing as well as housing, encouraging housing stock in the town. And so the 3 buckets are affordable housing density, there is a 2 to 4 unit requirement, and there's an accessory dwelling unit requirement. And so I'd like to cover 2 of them because one of them, the Growth Planning Committee has not provided any recommendations on. They're still mulling it over. The first one, which I think is the easiest because we don't have to make many changes to it, is the accessory dwelling unit. That in the town code is called accessory apartments. What we are required is that we have to allow accessory apartments everywhere throughout town, which currently you do. They can be attached or detached on an existing single-family dwelling. They are exempt from your density requirements. There's no additional parking standards required outside of what normally you would require for residential that's on the property. And the state legislature created a floor for the square footage, but you could put a cap, and the town has already done that at 800 square feet. And so that's the proposal it's not many changes you have to make for that proposal. Is there any questions on that particular section? Because I don't want to jump around.
So the largest size is 800 square feet, or is it the minimum?
That's the max.
That's
So,
the max,
yep, the minimal is
190.
190. Yep,
190.
Okay.
yep.
So Galen, are you gonna talk about what the growth committee came forward with additional things?
Yep. So the Growth Committee did submit some additional optional amendments that are, addressing some community concerns. One of them is a stormwater amendment that requires a stormwater plan to be submitted with any accessory apartment that is being proposed on a site. So there is some language in there, and certainly we can discuss that in further detail at future meetings, because this is not going to be the first time that you're going to be addressing this. There is also additional language that the state addressed concerns from towns across the state as it relates to non-conforming lots. And so we added that language in there too. It's at the very end of that section. And what that does is basically says if you're in a non-conforming lot, meaning you already maxed out your density or your lot coverage, you can't make a structure outside that's going to make it more non-conforming. So if your lot coverage is 20% and this proposed structure is, going to exceed that 20%, they can't do it. But if they want to do something inside, they can. They can make an accessory apartment on the inside.
And we also put in the short-term rental.
Ban,
Yes,
yeah.
they don't qualify for short-term rentals.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
So when we worked through this at the growth committee, this was, already in our ordinances as something. And, from you look at what the state of Maine has put forward, some of the discussion was around, for our residents, this is a good thing, right? So for people trying to look for additional income, for people that are, this would help also with our long-term rentals, and also with long-term rental rates, because they want to be able to circumvent and get those short-term rentals. So it would be true long-term rentals. When we worked with Galen about how many have actually used this really hasn't been used, but we don't know if it's just because our community at large doesn't have understanding of this as an opportunity. And the last part is that when we're going through these other 2 sections, there's different rules for, how we have designated in the town growth areas, transition, and rural areas for these 3 buckets that Galen took us through. For the accessory dwelling unit, as Galen said, this applies to everywhere. And I think my one question that I would like for when we address the public and when we have future discussions about this is, we did put that language in there for water runoff. What I'm not sure about is what processes within our planning board or within whatever is going to actually be able to implement that or, monitor that. I didn't understand that, so I think that would be helpful in future discussions.
Yep.
Yeah, assess it.
Alan, did you have a question?
Yeah, do I need to go out?
Yep.
Yeah.
You're coming back, right? Yep.
Alan Evelyn, resident of Kennebunkport. I believe when this bill was passed, there was an amendment which stated that it did not infringe upon deeded covenants.
Right.
So accessory dwelling units, or specifically accessory apartments, I know there are a lot of people included here that have covenants against that in their property, and they may be for time immemorial or maybe a certain number of years.
Right.
Okay, but that's covered then?
So you cannot, if you are restricted by covenants within the deeds of your property, this does not circumvent or override it. Is that's correct?
So that's a very good question. It does come up a lot. So if there's a deed restriction on it, the town doesn't recognize deed restrictions, but private abutters or individuals who are put the deed covenant, they can enforce it through civil action. So they can prohibit it through the legal courts.
And so the way we were considering it when we were discussing was that, that would
Prevent
hold
us
up.
giving. Yeah.
Yeah,
this-
that would prevent us giving, right?
We don't recognize, that's a general policy. We don't recognize deed covenants. But if private individuals that put the deed covenant in place, they can take civil action. That's how municipalities avoid contract law. We don't get involved in that.
So
That's not,
it's getting involved, but we cannot deny a
We cannot deny.
permit based on the
Correct.
fact of, interesting.
Yep.
But we can certainly inform them that you're setting yourself up
Yep.
for some income.
We can advise them. Yep.
And that would happen within our,
And keep in mind, when they try to sell the property, that's gonna trigger when they do a title search. If they do go that route, that, hey, flag, you're not allowed to have accessory apartments, so that might impact financing. But
Right.
that's something that we're not in control of at all.
and I think one more point too, different, and Galen, correct me if I'm wrong, but one other point that, the accessory dwelling units right now in our ordinances are 6 months. You have to be a resident in that thing, so that it's not a 3-month rental, it's a longer term rental, right? So this really sets us up for some abilities to get to that, these people in our community that are looking for those longer term rentals.
So it's beyond the normal definition of, or not short-term, right? 'Cause
Right,
Not
right.
short-term, I thought it's 30 days, isn't
You-
it actually?
yeah.
Am I right on that?
You
Yeah.
can certainly put residency requirements on, and also, accessory apartments can be limited just to single-family dwellings. So if you have a duplex, you can't put an accessory apartment on the land. It's only single-family.
Right.
Yep.
So this gives you, because you already have that by default, and,
Mm-hmm.
and on our old ordinance, the accessory dwelling would, die, basically,
Mm-hmm.
when the person sold the property. And that no longer will happen. So this is, so if somebody invests and they put an accessory dwelling on their land, that actually will go forward when, that person goes to sell. So those are some of the nuances, but it actually is strong in terms of then allowing that dwelling to be there. And
And supports affordable housing too, I think, that's.
well, that, and it supports families that are looking for either, to bring in just like it was originally planned, bring in an in-law or an older parent or younger kid or anything.
Even an older kid.
Even an older kid.
Yep.
They do come back to roost.
Is there anything we can do about the parking?
So parking you can't, not for this particular case. They have to follow whatever the requirements are for that zone, for that single-family dwelling, which is 2 spaces per, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so you'd have to have 4.
No.
No.
Oh, so they would not have to follow.
Yeah, we don't follow it, nope.
How do we come up with a .66?
We didn't.
So that's another bucket, so I don't want to confuse your buckets. The other thing I wanted to clarify for this bucket, that's the accessory dwelling units, the accessory apartments, is they don't follow your growth permits. So I thought that's worth mentioning, and they don't follow your density requirements. So just wanted to make that clear, and that's the case now, like that's already in your land use code.
So tomorrow, we literally could just have accessory dwellings pop up all over.
You can do it tomorrow. I mean,
Yeah.
it's today, it's the law right now. Like, you
Yeah.
already have accessory apartments.
Yep.
The Growth Planning Committee just did a good job of doing some proactive measures that are to address some of the concerns they had for the community. So that's, and again, I can go into greater detail at future meetings. This isn't the first time we're discussing it.
Question?
Yep.
Diane Franz, Kennebunkport, 160 Main Street. I wondered what the implication is for taxes. So if you have a single home, your tax assessment is such. If we're going to put another dwelling on it, is there a separate tax bill for that? Is there, does that increase the value of the property so that your tax rate is going to go up? So I just kind of curious how that gets fixed and worked out.
Is it reassessed once
The
the unit is
valuation,
built?
well, you can't reassess at a sale.
So Galen, did you want to answer that?
So the answer to that question, it's a good question. The accessory dwelling units are part of the lot. You can't separate it, you can't sell it separately, so there's no separate card. I know the assessor does code it as an accessory apartment, so it is coded. I don't know what the valuation is, that is maybe.
So it would be part of the original tax bill in the future, just like pretend you put a garage on your property. The garage would increase the value of the structures, the buildings, and that depends on how big the garage is and what it's made out of, and the same thing with the accessory dwelling unit. So it would increase the value. The tax rate itself would not change, but the tax bill would, as the value increased.
So help me understand, so if I built an accessory unit in April, my taxes were X, or my valuation was X before April, when would I expect my evaluation to change? When does it change?
So every year, by state law, we assess valuation as of April 1st.
Got it,
So if you built it after April 1st, we would not get you to the following
got it.
April
But then it
1st.
goes up 12,
But if you did it on March 31st, we would thank you.
yes, please.
Yes.
Start yours April 2nd.
Yeah, it's like having that birthday at December 31st.
Yep.
Your parents never forgive you.
My daughter's December 3rd.
Any additional questions for the accessory apartment side?
No.
of that
We're
bucket?
good.
Okay. So the next bucket, which you have some amended language in front of you, is the affordable housing density bonus piece. And so what the state law said is basically you have to allow a 2.5 times the base density of your zoning for any proposed affordable housing development, which is defined by HUD, and we have those definitions in the amended language in front of you. The other caveat I wanted to make was that there's a parking space requirement of 2 parking spaces for every 3 units. I don't know why they came up with the calculation for that, but that's what it is. We have to accept it. The other thing, the affordable housing developments cannot occur outside your growth area and wherever the zoning is for multiplex. So it has to meet those 2 caveats, or it needs to be zone multiplex and have a adequate water system in town. And so I did a list of what areas are in the growth area. It's part of your free enterprise zone. It's your Cape Porpoise East, it's Cape Porpoise Square, Cape Porpoise West, Village Residential East, Village Residential, Cape Arundel, you have the Riverfront Zone, and then the Dock Square are in your growth areas. And then the multiplexes are Village Residential East, Dock Square, Riverfront Zone, and Cape Porpoise Square. So those are the places that can occur. So it's either they have to be zoned multiplex, and you have to be on public water and sewer, and it's not or they have to be in your growth area, And they can be on a private septic system if there's no public water or sewer going by there. But that's just to get the density. So I just want to make that aware that that's the 2.5 times density. If they want to do an affordable housing project outside of your growth area, they can, but they're not going to get the density, which is part of what makes it affordable is the concentration of dwelling units, that you can make it more economical.
They're not going to get the density relief,
Right.
basically. Got it.
Yep.
So the question I have, and when we went through this in the growth planning committee, and then when I read, the notes and stuff that you supplemented, that you supplied to us, I always understood it as it was in our, as you just went through, it's in our growth area, which is our lovely bright, light yellow shade. But there's a sentence in there for both the affordable housing and then the 2 to 4, which we're not going to talk about tonight, but
Yeah.
it's in both of them that says, or connecting to public water sewer. So it was that or thing that tripped me up,
Yep.
because I read it and I'm like, okay, it's the growth zone
Yep,
or
yep.
it's connecting the public water sewer. So all of a sudden I went back to say, okay, well, we have public water sewer down at Goose Rocks Beach that is not in the growth zone, that is not where we want high density, so
Yep, but multiplexes, which are your apartments, are not allowed in Goose Rocks Beach. So the overarching is where are multiplexes allowed in your town? And then if they do allow for zoning for multiplexes, then they have to be on public water and sewer.
So that trumps
Yeah.
it then. So
So I
Okay.
just talked to Gray about that. I talked to the state officials today about this. That's why I'm,
yeah, so I
Going
think
over. Yep.
if there's a means that we can clear that up in our own, because when the state does stuff and they gave us
Yeah.
this language, I would maybe, if we could make that clearer in
Okay.
our own language for our ordinance, so that it just is,
Hey, let's
you get
create
to
a
that
map.
or,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, wait a minute,
let's
Yeah.
create a map. I mean,
Yeah.
they get your GIS and let's show, where's the multiplex, and then within that, where are the,
Yeah.
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 but in your growth area, even if they don't zone for multiplex, I wanted to make that abundantly clear. If it's in your growth area and it's not zone multiplex, they can still go into that area. Just wanted to let you know, that's
So it's only when it's outside the growth area
Yep.
that it has to be zoned?
zoned multiplex, yep.
Well, it's an interesting map you're gonna make.
It is. And you'll like the 2 to 4 unit one, too. So is there any questions about the affordable housing density bonus? That's,
No.
So
Again-
that means that, just to be clear for everybody listening, because some of us have been in it for a
Yep.
while, that means that, let's give an example. We have lot requires 40,000 square feet for one dwelling unit. Now we can put 2.5 times dwelling units in that 40,000 square feet.
yep.
In our growth area for affordable housing, where duplexes are,
Gotta remember that, yeah. I don't have it on top of my head, yeah.
okay, yeah, but that's, but
Right.
that's.
If
the
you
thing,
had
right?
if you have an 80,000 square foot lot, just to play hypotheticals, with the 2.5 density, that would be 5
Yep,
dwellings.
yeah.
Yep.
So,
And if it's in the growth area, they don't have to be on public water and sewer. They can put a septic tank in as long as it is permitted. The policy behind that is your growth area is where the community said they wanted growth to occur. So the higher density can go in there regardless of the public infrastructure. So I just want to make that clear.
So can we talk a little bit now, or do we want
Sure.
it to?
Sure.
So again, I'm putting on my glasses of, we went on our bus ride and saw the water runoff from just the rain, not from the storm surge. And, the growth committee gave me some background on our growth map and how we designated growth areas. And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but I understood it as long as you were 1,000 feet away from sewer hookup, that was one of the triggers for growth area, leaving out Goose Rocks Beach and those other areas that have sewer for shoreline preservation. So my question to you guys for discussion, and Lori and Galen and others, is once we go and put the ordinance in, we're not going to undo. So what I want to make sure is we go in eyes wide open, and I'm concerned that we might have some segments within the growth area that, as we tour it around, already have water runoff issues. So do they not become growth areas? Do they become transition areas, which they don't get the 2.5 times density? Once we go in and open this up and we get the 2.5 times density, I don't know how we take care of water runoff when, Chris and others have already told us, and we saw it, there's no place for the water to go. So I just want to open that, and again, it doesn't have to be just, cleared out, but I have that as a concern when I think forward of what's the ramifications in our area specifically, because that's our job, right? The state gave this, and now we got to figure out how to implement it.
You're talking about expansion with the accessory units?
No, I'm talking about the affordable housing, so that
Yeah,
goes
okay.
2.5 time density. So
That's
now-
what I was meant to
Yeah, so
talk
we're
about.
gonna do, in an area, we're gonna be able to go 2.5 times density
So
in
you-
any area that's a growth area.
So yeah,
And
so,
that, we toured some areas in our
we did.
thing that they can't even handle the solid surfaces that they have now.
Yeah,
you
and that,
know?
so that would certainly, I would think that would certainly be taken into consideration when there was a proposal to put a larger area in. I mean, that still needs to be approved.
It still needs to go through planning board approval.
It's
I
still
think it's a
gotta come
planning,
through
yeah,
the
I was just gonna say that.
And as long as you are considering, which I think we spoke about earlier, important things too, the runoff and the water consequences, that's what you do.
So
But-
when we looked at the water runoff, I think one of the committee members from Growth Committee pulled some stuff from Portland's ordinances, and it really was all about adjacent properties. It wasn't, so my problem here is,
Well, you have to consider adjacent property.
yeah, so I guess I need help from the rest of the board in just understanding, like, when you're in, how much purview, how much awareness does the planning board have on issues that we might have water problems? I don't understand, is that a good stopgap?
Yeah,
case?
my question would be, for anything we do on affordable housing, we have to get a building permits. Does the building permit now trigger, if we're gonna have multiple units on lots, does that now trigger water runoff survey or stormwater, or before it has to go to the planning board?
So before they can get a building permit, they have to go through the subdivision process.
Okay.
So that's gonna trigger it, the
Even,
3 or
okay,
more
even
units.
with, even
Yep.
with LD to that, okay.
Yep, so they're gonna, and again, with affordable housing, they're going to make high density because they need
Yeah.
to make it economical. They're not
Yeah.
just gonna do 2 units. It's
Yeah.
just not worth their time.
Yeah.
So when that's triggered, that's when the planning board will review it with engineers to make sure.
Okay.
Because you do have stormwater procedures already in place in the land use code for subdivision. The reason we put it in the accessory dwelling units
Right, 'cause it
was
wasn't.
because there was nothing that doesn't trigger planning board review. So that's why the committee thought that they needed some kind of protection for that process.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're very diligent in this area, because we already have areas in the growth areas in towns where we're just literally, like, we had super saturation this summer, we had water, we had freeze, we had water, and we just, as Chris has shown us, there's no place for this stuff to go. So I think as long as we are very thorough in that. And my next one, because I always have more, is on the wastewater treatment plan. As we're going forward through this and we go through the public hearing process, I think it would be, I would request, and I don't know what the rest of the board feels, that Chris and Eric come forward with some ideas, or what can we do, because we're probably going to have to spend some money on getting or closing up where that wastewater comes in and adds all this surge to the plant. Because we ran into it in the summer, we ran into it in this winter. And if we start increasing density and potential more runoff, how do we handle that? And so I think right now, I don't know, Chris and Eric had talked about, John, when you and I went on the tour, maybe they can, there's some areas to lock up some of the sewers tighter, or where they're permeation. So I don't know if there's something that we need to consider from that point from the town, just so that we can get a little bit more latitude in our wastewater treatment plant from pure water runoff, the strain that it puts in
Yeah,
there.
I may not understand that, but my sense was it may not be so much as an issue of the runoff as it is, as you mentioned, closing the manhole covers and the infiltration you get
Yeah.
even to the pipes themselves. And there's also the huge problem of sump pumps.
Right.
That folks have put directly into the sewer.
Do we know that that's a huge problem yet, Chris?
It-
Because I'm not, I don't know of anybody who has one that goes directly into,
Well,
anybody I know has,
let's-
goes directly in.
let's
Yeah.
Chris
Yeah,
talk.
Chris, yeah.
So, I mean, I can't confirm that it's a huge problem. I can tell you that over the last 5 years now, I've been to houses and it was, kind of an inconsequential finding, when I was speaking with them about another problem, and I did find several houses that have had sump pumps, tied into the system. It did happen about 4 years ago. We actually got home heating oil at the plant. We never did find out where that was coming from, but that is one of the reasons we can't have those tied in, because most likely what happened was there was a heating oil tank failure that made its way over to the sump hole and then got discharged to the plant. And we don't have a way to deal with that at the plant. So unfortunately, that goes through the system and gets discharged out to the river. So I can't confirm it's a problem, but I do suspect it probably is.
And when you look at the volume of water that came into the plant due to that rainstorm, it's hard to think that it would just be infiltration through a broken
4
sewer
or
or
5 inches of
something.
rain on top of a frozen ground is gonna give you a good amount of water.
Well, you get a lot of water, but not necessarily in the sewer. Where it's
Well,
coming
if-
from in the
If it's
sewer,
going in the manholes,
again, it depends on how much infiltration you're getting, and it would.
So tonight, we're not gonna argue about
Yeah.
that.
Right.
But certainly, we have had a lot of conversations internally about the, what we call the I&I problem, which is additional water. And when we met with Woodard and Curran on Friday last week, we discussed that more as a group about what we might do to attack that problem, and because you can spend a lot of money studying that, and then that hasn't even begun to address it. And so, I think in this January storm and looking at Goose Rock's beach area, for example, Eric and Chris particularly noted that the amount of water we were getting through our system when there was low tide and rain had stopped, says to us, there's probably a lot of sump pumps going into our system. And so, so one thing is, we can cure the wastewater problem by doing a lot of effort and work, and we talked about hiring an intern this summer, as part of the wastewater crew, to go around and do inspections in certain areas where we see the highest flow, to try and that would probably be the cheapest way to start to address it. But once you remove it from wastewater, I told them to put their public works hat on, because now we got water in the streets when all those people are not putting it in wastewater, because we don't have a separate stormwater system as they do in other cities. And so it is a huge problem. It is a problem that I'm worried about, in terms of development and continued flooding, because we're seeing these heavier rainstorms. And the fact that the planning board does what it can, but they're looking at every development in a silo, and they request a professional analysis of that, and they review it and ask good questions. But I think it's a larger issue that we need to look at in swaths of town, because water travels and it doesn't stop at property lines or city or town limits. And so I think that is an issue. But the other thing is, we started talking about what if we have to create a stormwater utility? Let's look at the beach. So we tell everybody to take all their water out, and they're pumping. I mean, we were pumping down the west end, and it kept going up because people were pumping out their basements. And some people were pumping water out of their basement as it flooded back into their basement, And so where's that water going to go? And they don't have any other good place to put it. We can say it's a private issue, but so then we're creating a whole network of utilities, and if we were to ever do that, I would say, well, that would be a separate utility district, and we'd have stormwater fees for people who are attached to the stormwater system. So these are big, big issues that I don't think we're gonna attack with just LD 2003, but we need to look at overall.
Yeah, I think part of the thing is that we see it, like, we are there now, like, what the last storms has shown us, and like Chris had pointed out, that if what happened to us a couple weeks ago happened during the summer, because you were using the 2 reserve tanks.
Yes, yep.
And so that's part of the thing too, is there things that we need to do, like in terms of, I know nothing, so let's start with that. But do we have to do more reserve tanks or something just to hold? Yeah, I don't know what the answers are, but all I know is that we're there right now. And then
And
if
we looked at the idea of another reserve tank the other day, but you're talking about 1 million gallons of water.
Yep.
And we don't have a tank big enough to hold that. And if this event in January had happened in July or August, it would have been even worse for many reasons. And so I would tell you, we have so much work to do, and it is beyond our current staff and consultant levels.
And I think that's where, I want to make sure that we're, so when I look at what we're going to be doing with the LD 2003 and what the state has come forward with, we have to we're looking at our own house right now, and in our own house, we have some water issues. So before we can literally take on more water, we have to have some kind of path. We can't literally open up the floodgates and say, come build, because I don't know how we would handle these more, unless we start taking all the pavement out of the town, and create non-porous or porous, but it's just part of that. I think we've got to figure, I get what you're saying, Lori, I appreciate that, and I think that's something that we've got to figure out a way to do this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Bob, you want to come up to the microphone?
Hand raised on Zoom.
Okay.
I have well, I think it's unrelated to what the discussion just was, but in this whole accessory dwelling conversation, if there's a property that's not on public water or public sewer, but 3-4 acres out in a zone that doesn't have that, in order to have an accessory dwelling, does that dwelling have to have its own separate septic system and separate well?
Galen?
Another good question. It was actually one I was going to be answering. So if you have a single-family dwelling and you want to put an accessory apartment on that property, you can do it, and you can tie it into your existing septic tank. However, I'm going to put a little caveat. Septic tanks are designed based off the number of bedrooms.
Right.
If that accessory apartment is going to trigger over the limit of what that septic tank was designed for, the person will not get the building permit until they upgrade the septic tank. So I just want to put that as a caveat. You can use the same well. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
So I want to make sure that
Anybody else?
disclaimer was there.
Is there a hand raised?
Yes.
Okay.
Robin, you can speak.
2 questions on the LD 2003, and the first one is, could you please describe the process that adds or decreases the number of growth permits? Is that something that needs to be brought to the public for a vote, or can that be achieved internally by the BOS and planning department? That's the first question.
So for growth permits, it's a first come, first served basis based off which growth area they are in town.
Yeah, that's not my question. We have 40 right now, right? So the town has not always had 40. I remember when it was 36. So I'm just asking, say with the LD 2003, there's a big appetite for this growth, but we only have 40 growth permits and they count as long as they're not an ADU, correct?
That's correct.
So
Yep.
so who decides to decrease or increase the growth permits? Is that achieved through ordinance where citizens have to vote on that? Or is that something the BOS and the planning department can decide and just raise or decrease the number?
That is in your land use code. There is a formula for that. I don't have it off the top of my head. But there is a formula that's in the land use code that stipulates how many growth permits there are.
Right, so right now, we
I
have
think
40,
Robin's
so-
asking, how do you lower that?
Or
You'd have to
increase
change
it.
the formula, yeah.
No, but
Right,
I
so-
think it,
Who has the authority to
Oh,
change the
I mean,
formula?
the board does, yeah. You have to pass the ordinance, yeah.
I don't
the-
know if it needs a public input, that, I don't know.
Well, yeah, it
I
has
don't
to be
know
passed by the town at that.
It would have to go back to the voters.
Yeah.
so right now, though, I think in the ordinance, because I think we talked about this in the growth planning committee, in the ordinance right now, which I'm not going to be able to find, there is a formula, like you said, Galen, for an increase. And I think the question is it an automatic trigger or?
Yep.
Okay, so
It's based off, I think it's off your dwelling units, if I remember correctly. I just don't have that formula in
Yes.
front of me, yeah.
okay, so like right now, I know when we've talked, we've got, we have 40 permits, we got 20 growth, 12 in the transition area, and then 8 in rural.
Yep.
And then we can use, like if, the planning board can say they can take some from the transition group if, I think that was part of the process too, right? They can take them from other zones.
So you can always upgrade, so you can always go to more higher density areas. If there's unused permits in the rural zone, for example, those permits can be issued to the transitional zone. And same goes with transitional zone. If there's some left over at the end of the year, and we're getting near the end of the year, they can be issued in the growth area. But they can't go the opposite direction. So if the growth area has more permits left over, they can't go to the transitional area. And if there's permits left in the transitional zone, they can't go to the rural zone.
Okay, so
So
it can go
that's-
up but not down?
Yep.
Okay. And then, not for now, but maybe when we get to the public hearings?
Yep.
Maybe for the last, I stopped by the office, and maybe for the last, 5 or 10 years, or use your discretion, how much growth permits did we use per year? So just to give the public, because I think perception is that there's building going on, and are we maxing out our growth permits? Are we using, so that might be good information for the public.
Yep,
just to
I know
have.
that there is an excerpt in your comprehensive plan about that for the historical data, so that should be very easy to get.
Okay. And then,
I don't think Robin was done with her
oh,
questions.
sorry.
Yeah, I have, my second question, and we've touched upon this, but how will the town decide how many permits will go for LD 2003 mandated units? Will we set up a new category for that, or will it be first come, first serve as it is currently? And I understand mostly it'll be in the growth, where there's 20. But how, well, say there's a large appetite for this, will we have that in a different compartment, or will we just, like, say the developer gets in line first and takes 20, like, say somebody wants to put in, a significant amount, how will that affect the other zones if you're going to, rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak? How would that work? So, a lot of time, like the rural, you have to wait until the end of the year to make sure that there's not people in the rural area or the transitional zone that want to have a building, so that the mandated units on the growth area, they have to wait and see if there's any left? Is that how that would work?
Yeah, so the land use code does stipulate that there's 10% allocated for affordable housing. So that is already in your land use code, that you have stipulated that your growth permits, 10% of them are earmarked for affordable housing, regardless of what happens. As for allocation, I would have to get back to you with the code officer for how they historically have done that in the past. I don't have that answer available tonight.
So it seems it would take a long time to get a significant number of units,
Yep,
correct?
yep. There's housing developments where it's been multiple years that they had to keep applying for growth permits. So that's, yeah,
Right.
especially with the
So
high density.
affordable housing can only grow so quickly.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Robin.
Just for my own information, I'm going to use the person that was going to develop the what we now know as the village parcel. So I think they were thinking about 80 units or something in there. So was that developer, to what Robin just asked, so then that developer would have like a 5-year plan when they were doing their own financials?
Back then? Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, it just
That's how
can't
that
do
worked?
89 at once or whatever it was.
And just to clarify
Yeah, it was a lot of years.
on that question, so if we have 40 permits per year, just to be clear, LD 2003 doesn't create more permits.
Correct.
It just creates a zoning change, and
Yep.
so people still apply on a first-come, first-served basis. And also, no more than 7 growth permits shall be issued to any one or particular individual, property owner, developer, or company
okay.
during each calendar year, except that on or after December 1st of any calendar year, any remaining permits that have not been issued. So this gets to the question of the rural and transitional zones that Robin was asking. Any additional permits that have not been issued may be issued to any individual property owner, developer, or company, including those that have already received their maximum allocation of 7.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so I think that's going to be very helpful for people to understand.
It's gonna be a boom.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions? More?
Move on.
Okay. So that is the summary of the amendments that are in front of you. The 2 to 4 units, that will be, again, discussed at a later date. I don't think that's going to meet the town meeting requirements. It might be something that gets in front of the voters in November. So I don't want to waste your time tonight if I don't
So
have the
let's
language.
just clarify that.
Okay. So we have to draft up the amendments with the growth planning committee and then make a report to the planning board regarding what their findings are and their suggestions. Basically, what this bucket will do is it allows up to 2 units in every zone, but they have to meet your density, and 4 units in your growth area. And it says, or in water and sewer and a comp plan, but we have a comp plan, so it's only in your growth area. Another little caveat, that's a little twist to this. The state law says for every parcel that you have, if there's an existing single family on it, you can put 2 additional units on it, regardless of where you are in the town. So it's gonna be a little bit of a change that we need to mull over, but,
And we just want to clarify with the board that according to the state, we need to be in compliance with all 3 of these buckets by July 1st. Or the date is a little after, it's like July 14th, Bastille Day or something. And so, because of our review and our concern about the impacts of this 3rd bucket, the Growth Planning Committee is recommending that we prolong that review and not do it until November vote. Is that accurate?
yep, that's accurate.
And so that means there is no state penalty for not being in compliance in July currently. But there is instead, what they have told municipalities is that you will be liable in case a developer wants to sue you because your ordinances are not in compliance with state statute. So I want you to understand that that is a risk associated by not adopting these ordinance changes prior to the July 1st deadline. I think that Galen and I believe that that's a low risk for the town of Kennebunkport, but it is a risk, and we want to have on record that we've notified you.
Maybe they'll push the time up further.
What,
They have a good way of doing that sometimes.
any idea what prompted the state to do this?
The state conducted a committee, that task force, that explored why the state of Maine has a housing issue right now of unaffordability, of a lack of housing stock, and they identified that local zoning was one of those barriers potentially that was stopping additional housing in the area. So that was their.
Okay.
Again, Kennebunkport is not a huge player in this because we don't have zones where it's just single family. We allow duplexes in all of our zones, but there were actual towns that just had single family, and you had to have like a 4-acre minimal, and it just made, you couldn't do any housing in their communities. So that was the state's.
They wanted it.
Yeah, that was the state's solution to this, so.
Okay, move on.
You have
Oh,
a hand.
question?
Hi all. I'm Ed Francis. I live at 2 Touchstone Drive, and I serve on the planning board. And I have to say, I've been smiling back here, especially at Ms. Gilbert's comments.
In a good way or a bad way?
No, in a familiar
I
way.
never know.
We got, on the planning board, we got to look at the language that's before you a week ago, and I have to tell you, we struggled with it. Now we look at the land use ordinance as a primary source here, that and the subdivision regs, and one of the things I'll tell you about our land use ordinance is they are, I want to say they're clear. They're clearer than your average government document. They're well-written.
Well, that's not saying much.
Yeah, they are well written.
I mean it in a positive way. We find ourselves parsing the language with a developer, with a homeowner who wants to do something, and by and large, it's clear. You might have to, diagram the sentence sometimes, but the new language that's in front of you isn't up to that standard right now. And I'm just cautioning and offering the help of the planning board to work the language even before the public meeting, but certainly as a part of that process, because I do think it's important to keep that ordinance a working document, one that the code enforcement people can look at and say, oh yeah, this is what it means, not, well, I think this is what the folks up in Augusta meant, right? We want our interpretation to be captured and clear. And it's a hard problem because the language of the statute, the main statute, is not crisp and clear. Shocking, right? But, so I make you that offer. We're interested in working with that with the code enforcement office, and
Yeah, good.
I think it's important.
I think it's important for the people that have to interpret to give us their input on how,
Rather
I think the
than I
growth, the
told you
growth
so.
committee did a really good job in terms of, I think, intent and maybe some, tried to reverse some maybe side effects, like the water runoff, but again, the growth committee doesn't do the.
Perfect example. And our reaction to that, I say I can't speak for the board, but my reaction and some others was, well, all right, you're gonna do that for an accessory apartment. We're gonna ask the code enforcement office to require a homeowner who wants to put up an accessory apartment to get a stormwater analysis. Well, first of all, that's an expensive proposition. We don't do it for garages, but we're gonna put in a new ordinance that does it for, potentially, we're proposing to put it in place for a new ordinance that does it for accessory apartments. Well, right away, I think you open the door for a lawsuit there that says, wait a minute, you're throwing tax on the road. You're making it hard for someone to put in an accessory apartment. Why don't I just build a garage? And then later on, I'll convert it. Or vice versa, what if I have an accessory apartment? So I think we need to do things that are uniformly enforceable across the board, not depending on today's use or
I think that's
tomorrow's
a good
use.
point, and I think, when we went on our bus tour after I like the bus tour, on our, after the storm, and we know this in town, that some houses get built and they come up just a little bit of a grade, and they're flooding out their neighbor just because of the overall. So I think that's the actual problem that we have in the town right now, and then we looked at this. Yeah, we looked at this and said, okay, we're gonna exasperate it, so how do we stop it? So I think that, and you heard all the water discussion here.
No.
So this all has to
And we
be
see it, but the planning board only gets to look at it when it's a subdivision, right? This happens on every home that's built, and possibly every addition to every home. Now, asking everybody to go to Acorn Engineering for a stormwater analysis to put up a new garage probably isn't the right answer there, but I think we need to empower the code enforcement office to ask for what's necessary, and do that in a cost-effective manner, and not set ourselves up for looking like we're trying to stop people really from putting on accessory apartments.
Well, I think for me personally, it's, I look at it this way. If there's a person that's living on fixed income in a house And then there's a lot that gets built next door, newer home. Grade gets raised. The person on fixed income now has water coming streaming into their basement. And and right now, that's all able to be done in our town.
Absolutely.
And so now we're putting burdens and encumbrance on a fixed income person to then go and fix a problem that didn't exist before this. So that's the thing that when you're hearing all these conversations from, especially my point, this is the
And
part
that's
I'm
independent of
struggling
income, actually, that you've painted a picture where it's a person who is not of means has the
Right.
problem, but it's across the board.
It's across the
And you know,
board,
the only
right.
reason, in my opinion, that it's not worse is we've had, and we continue to have, a very proactive code enforcement office, right? So, you know, I have to hand it to that group. The fact that this isn't a more pervasive problem
Right,
is due to them. But it's real,
but it's still a problem, right?
absolutely.
And I think we've talked about, you know, whether a planning board member would want to sit with the growth planning committee as they go through this, certainly to see both the beginning and end of that process.
We've talked about that, and
We're looking for a volunteer,
I think
That's the way it used to be, by the way, is we would have the planning board, we would have a member of the planning board with the growth planning
Yeah,
committee.
yeah.
And-
I think it does need to be, right or wrong, my naive view is that the growth committee is the more visionary, forward-looking group, and the planning board is, well, this is what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Right? So
Well,
it's important to have.
It's implementationable versus
That's right.
vision. Yeah, I get you there.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Better said. But, yeah, I do think that would help. But I think beyond that, I think just the crafting of the language doesn't have to be done all in committee. It needs to be reviewed in committee. But I think if, you know, hey, this is ready for review by the planning board, send it over there. Take a red pen to it, send it back. A couple of times back and forth might get us a better product in the end.
I think that's a good strategy.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Do we need to recommend that, or has that been heard, or?
No, it's been heard, but.
So I mean, that process happens.
Yeah,
I
Galen
think
does
the
that.
challenge is if the planning board has a very different viewpoint about why or what, I mean, this isn't about, to me, wordsmithing. This is about ideology and about what's correct to bring forward as concepts. And that happens at the table at the Growth Planning Committee. That's how it's structured in Kennebunkport. And so really, we need to have that conversation there.
So I think there are two aspects of it, because I think there is a crafting part of it. But you're right, it doesn't start there. It starts in the committee, and I take your
So
point that
Galen,
we need a representative.
Galen will send you the Growth Planning Committee, the planning board invites, so anybody from the planning board can attend.
All right, great.
Does that make sense, Galen?
Hey, Galen, you got more you want to talk about?
You want to talk about the FEMA maps?
Yes.
I will say Robin has her hand raised again.
Okay, the next amendment that's in front of you is regarding the FEMA maps. So this is the flood insurance rate maps. This is a long history with the town. It has occurred since, I believe, 2013, when FEMA proposed amending our original flood insurance rate maps. And so the town, with a bunch of other towns in the coast, hired a consultant. We proposed that there are some errors in what is being proposed by the federal government. Federal government didn't agree, and so there was an amendment appeal process that some towns undertook. In the meantime, the town, using our consultant, provided an amendment to those flood insurance maps. And so the problem is those amendments were not looked at until the appeal process was over. We just received a letter, and I gave to Chairman Weston tonight, that FEMA has decided the appeal process. They approved the map appeal from the town of Old Orchard. And so now we have to go through the process of adopting FEMA's flawed maps, while the federal government is looking over our amendment that they are proposing. And so there is going to be a little bit of a lapse here, and there's going to be a communication strategy that we're going to need to formulate, because there are people that are not currently in the flood maps that in FEMA's, they now have to get flood insurance. And under our proposal, the amendment, they're not going to be required to have flood insurance. And this is only for mortgages. I just want to put that out there for that caveat. And so the theory that we have with our town attorney is that the flood insurance maps have to be approved, the FEMA ones, by the 27th, which is why you have that boilerplate ordinance in front of you. We are going to add amendment language to that that says, with the caveat, we're going to approve this to the town vote pending our amendment that is in front of FEMA. So the theory is, on July 27th, these FEMA maps that the federal government has will go into effect, and on the 28th, pending the federal approval, our amendment will be approved and will be taking effect. So there's going to be a one-day delay.
So you believe we'll have it by the 28th of July?
That's
FEMA?
what we're being
They've
told by our
told
attorneys.
us.
Yep,
That's why, who told us?
FEMA.
FEMA told us?
yep.
FEMA and the state.
All right.
Is that a
So
pretty clear
the
review?
issue is that
Flood insurance.
when I came here 10 years ago, we were dealing with this issue, and we were supposed to approve those maps, and we spent a good amount of money doing a lot of analysis. So now FEMA has said, our maps will go into effect, but we will agree to your amendments, but it will be the day after. Because of federal process, the maps have to go into effect before a revision can go into effect. So there's this one-day period, hypothetically one day, that people will need flood insurance. And so,
Good luck.
I misunderstood. So they have accepted our amendment. So
No.
this is,
they have said to us, we haven't received it in writing, but we have been working with them a long time, and we understand that they will accept these revisions. Is what I've understood.
okay,
I'm looking to Galen to see if
Yes,
he's heard
that's what-
anything
That's what our
different.
attorney said, yep.
okay.
And so the challenge we have been faced with is trying to communicate to residents how they will be getting, and Galen said they're already getting calls from mortgage companies who know these flood maps are coming. And so there will be people who now need flood insurance, who will continue to need flood insurance, even with our revisions. Our revisions don't take it back to where it was, but they reduce certain areas in certain parts of town. And so, but that was the best we could do with the federal government. So there will be this communication piece, we'll be sending out, telling people the new flood maps will take effect. And the town has to vote to accept these revisions, or otherwise, people won't be eligible to participate in the flood insurance program. And then what happens is the day after, the map revisions are supposed to go into effect, and some of those people won't need flood insurance. So we've been trying to work with companies and mortgage people and insurance companies, and they're telling us that this could work. But, Galen and I don't have a high degree of faith. This is all going to be seamless, I would say.
Taken
So
forever
is
anyway.
for the people that are not, that are only going to be in the flood zone for the one day, is the mortgage company is going to give them like a one-day buy, or what, do we have a sense for the, no?
I don't know.
No.
It's going to be
I don't
different.
think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
There is a solution to that.
Okay.
Well,
Alan?
We'll take it.
Alan Evelyn. I'm pretty sure that Maine has, similar to Massachusetts, a buyer's remorse law.
I don't know.
In that, you have, I don't know if it's 48, 2 days, 3 days, but they're pretty much, you can get your money back on anything that you decide you don't want. And car dealers do not want you to know about this law. They want to hide it, but generally, on any anything, and I don't know what the value is, but you can get your money back if you do it within so many days. So I think that may be an outlet. Buyer's remorse, I had to buy this, I don't want it, and I'm getting my money back. So, potential solution.
Thanks. Galen?
That's good to know.
So these maps, how, if I'm a homeowner, how do I know where I am, what my flood situation is? Is that, they get on our GIS, they can see the flood maps?
Yep.
That's something, and so they would log on to the town website, they would find the GIS.
Yep.
They would turn on the layer.
Yet there's a layer for floodplain.
If
Yep.
they don't have a computer and their computer not very comfortable with it, I don't want to throw anybody up as a help desk, but is there an outlet for people? They
We
could
have
go-
2 libraries,
Graves Library is an excellent thought.
and
I'll throw them under the bus.
we can
That's
certainly communicate with both of our libraries in case they get questions about this as well. And certainly our staff is to help walk people through this. And we'll be sending out a mailing once we figure out how we're saying this.
But we won't say to individuals that they will say, go check. This-
Oh, no, we'll tell individuals.
Ah, very good. So by individual, we'll tell them. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Perfect.
So that's that amendment. So that's just the boilerplate state
Okay.
ordinance that we have to adopt, or else people don't get flood insurance. So.
Yeah, I know. Is Robin's hand still up?
No, she lowered it.
She lowered it?
This is Cynthia Domini. Is it possible that it could be an hourly thing versus a 24-hour thing? Like, why is it 24 hours? Couldn't it be amended and approved at 1 p.m. and at 2 p.m.?
It's the government.
Yeah, we did work with our federal congressional delegation as well as the Boston FEMA office, and it wasn't just us. We had about 6 towns that we were doing this analysis with, from Harpswell through the city of Portland, even all the way to Kittery. And we had several meetings with them, and this was the best we could broker with them.
Thanks, Galen. Mike?
Now Robin's raised her hand again.
Okay, Robin?
Yeah.
Robin have a question?
I'm sorry to go backwards a bit, but you didn't, you went on to a different topic while my hand was up, but I'm just wondering with the LD 2003, what the rush is. First of all, to say they're going to sue us, I mean, I'm seeing other towns, Booth Bay, who I feel is comparable to us, rejected it, and they have not suffered any consequence. And I think there are things that people, we are a home rule state, and I don't think a lot of Mainers really appreciate that approach from the state, because we already have 10% affordable housing. We had that before, but it wasn't happening. So I don't know the rush to get this on the June ballot. I think we should see how some of the other towns fare. I mean, and I'm sorry to go backward, but you didn't call him A. And, I think that was Mr. Francis was right. It's not a clear law, in my opinion. I've read it. I've read many different versions, and I still think there is some question there. So I'm just saying once in a while it might be a good idea to just, not rush it. We don't have to be the first ones in the water.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Is there a state law that says we gotta do it by, okay. There's a state law, okay.
You have a hand.
You have a hand up.
Okay, Bob?
Not necessarily to support Robin's question and comment, but I will ask you to recall back when John Baldacci was governor and every school district in Maine suddenly needed to consolidate, and basically, other than a few of us, everybody refused, and they were all fine. So every single one of them who refused were fine. So I think you kind of need to think about whether or not you want to really go along with it, because we have in our lifetimes, in our current lifetimes, an example of, we'd rather not.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right. Okay, moving on, we want to consider a quote from Allegiant Trucks for the wiring harness to fix truck number 2.
So in the last snowstorm, we had some issues with our truck too. Went into a derated engine power mode. We were able to get it back to the garage okay. Our mechanic, Rick Bleakney, brought it in to diagnose what the issue was, and as he started chasing stuff back, found a variety of issues with the wiring harness. There were some shorts, some breaks. As you can imagine, the wiring harnesses in these trucks are pretty extensive. He did chase back what he could chase back. And at this point in time, there's more there than he can simply just piece together. We are in need of a wiring harness at the time. At this time, the truck's just completely inoperable. We can't even get it to run now at this point because there's no power to the injectors. I would say that I was shocked at the price of the new wiring harness. Unfortunately, this is going to be a sole source purchase because it needs to come from International directly because it's vehicle specific. So the quote we got was $9,890.42.
Do you want to just
Yeah,
refer to
so
these photos behind you? Do you want to go back, Dave?
so this is currently how the truck is sitting in the garage. So it's all pulled apart right now. Just to give you some idea of the magnitude of the problem. And can you go to the next slide, Dave, please? So on the left, you'll notice the larger cable on the right-hand side with the red conduit. You can see at the top that got extremely hot at one point because it actually melted the insulation. And you'll also see on the electrical box on the left the amount of corrosion that's on that. Wiring on the right as well, you can see get extremely hot. You can actually see that the white jacket is burned on that. So we're at a point where we can't simply just cut out the bad sections and put in new stuff. So we're in need of an entire replacement.
How old's the truck?
This truck, I believe, is at this point 6 years old.
So there's no warranty or anything?
There is no warranty.
Just checking. Yeah.
The buyer's remorse has expired.
So I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye? Aye? Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Town Hall Building Committee update. And so I wanted to, we had our first new Town Hall Building Committee meeting on January 18th. And at that meeting, I'll tell you who was on the committee first. It's me, myself, and Mary Beth Gilbert. And then the staff attending was Lori and Yanina, Lori Smith and Yanina Nicholas. And the committee members attending were David Graham, Kevin McDonald, Dick Smith, Tim Pattison, John Ware, Alan Evelyn, Deborah Bauman, Judy Phillips, and April Defoe. And we had the invited experts were Mark Adams, Owens McCullough, and Mike Hayes, with Owens being our engineer, Mike being an architect, Mark Adams being the president of Sebago Techniques. So we had our meeting, and I wanted to bring everybody up on the discussion points, but part of the discussion that we had was how are we going to communicate with the public about how what we have discussed at the meetings. And so what we decided to do was to, at the very first selectmen's meeting, after we've had our committee meeting, we will give an update to the public on everything that we've done and what we said, what's in motion, what's been discussed, et cetera, et cetera. So our discussion points at this meeting was, and I'm going to read them because I think it's important. How can this committee better engage and educate the public? The committee decided to enhance communication through the select board meetings, as well as has some additional meetings in the future. We've had a couple of our members say that they will entertain people at maybe a coffee or something at their houses and so forth. So I think that's a good way to go. And we wanted to know what was some of the reasons for the negative vote. As you know, the vote, the building vote was the town hall vote was negative. The committee established a few reasons such as price, clear communication on energy efficiency, the need and benefit for the public, the better communication. In addition, the committee decided to send out a survey to the community to see if there were any other potential reasons, and the plan was to address those reasons if possible. And that survey went out, and have we received, is the survey date cut off now, or are we?
The survey was sent out today, and it is good until February 8th at noon.
Okay, so we are looking for input into, from people as to reasons and so forth. So then we decide what sites were explored for this project, and we, Sebago Techniques explored in detail the following sites: the village parcel, the village fire station, the current town hall site, the McCabe lot near School Street, and police station lot. So far, the village parcel was the best option financially and based on public response to the survey. The committee asked Sebago Techniques to take a look at so the two areas we want to take a look at right now are the village parcel lot and the fire station at 32 North Street. And we want to compare the village parcel lot and the village fire station lot as potential sites for the new town hall, and explore other potential options to reduce costs and different square footage, smaller footprint. We talked about parking, open spaces. We want to make sure the design feels like Kennebunkport. Talked about solar and geothermal and sending out the survey we just talked about and updating the public. And we're inviting, we have energy consultants coming to a future meeting to educate the committee on energy choices, solar, geothermal, and other. So that's an update on what we've done, and we have a member of the, two members of the committee here, Alan Evelyn and Mary Beth Gilbert, if they would like to comment on the meeting or add anything to it, be happy to have you do it.
I'll just reiterate, or I said, this is a good survey. I think the committee thought it was an appropriate way to communicate out. This way, information comes out in real time, and really put out an ask for people to complete the survey, because we can't work, unless we hear the voices of the people. So if you can, please partake in the survey. It would be very helpful. Alan, do you have anything? Okay.
Any questions? So, good, okay. All right, moving on. Discussion of the Goose Rocks Beach parking permit fees for 2024.
I do have a hand raised.
Oh, hand raised? Who?
Lori O.
Hello, Lori?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to know, you said the surveys went out today. Should we be watching our mailboxes or our inboxes?
It's not an email, it's snail mail.
It's an electronic survey, so it's on the website, and we sent out an email distribution, email as well as on social media. So the committee agreed that it would be an electronic survey.
That's what we did. You, okay?
I guess she's gone.
Comment? I guess she's gone. Okay. Okay, discussion of the Goose Rocks Beach parking permit fees for 2024. Do you want to do that? You want me to do it?
Nina?
Hello.
Oh, Yanina. Oh, I'm
How are
sorry.
you?
How could
Hi,
I miss?
Yanina Nicholas, Director of Support Services. So it's this time of year again when we are going to discuss Goose Rocks Beach parking stickers. So as you know, yearly the board approves fees for resident stickers, daily stickers, weekly, and seasonal non-resident stickers. During the March budget meetings, two boards, budget board and the
last year.
March of last year, that's right. Two boards, the budget board and the Board of Selectmen, try to come up with ways to increase revenues. And one of the ideas was to increase, to adjust parking sticker prices. So the board discussed to increase resident stickers from $5 to $10. It did not happen last year because the discussion was a little too late and stickers were already being sold. But the board talked about doing it this summer season. Yet, board discussed to increase the price of daily stickers, which happened as of last year. So it increased from $25 to $30. And then during that discussion, weekly stickers and seasonal non-resident stickers had no change in the price. So as I've mentioned, the board implemented the price change for daily stickers during that meeting and agreed on resident stickers to go up to $10. Yet, in addition, staff proposes for the board to look into increasing weekly stickers as well as seasonal non-resident stickers. If you will agree to the adjustments, our revenues can potentially increase by $38,000. So the proposed adjustments are go as following. So resident stickers will be $10, daily stickers will be $30, and then we offer to increase weekly stickers from $100 to $125, so by $25, and then seasonal non-resident stickers by $50, and the price would go up from $200 to $250. So if board has any questions or has any suggestions for this?
Yeah. Yeah? Yeah,
sure.
I'm wondering, you get a hamburger, fries, and a Coke these days, and it's gonna be darn close to $30, if not more. You go to Lost Fire, you gotta take out a loan, but that's all right. I mean, they're very good at Lost Fire, I should say, they're excellent. But I would like to see that $40 myself,
What?
Okay,
for a non-resident daily sticker. To me, it's a day at the beach. It is a way our residents for $10 can go anytime if they can get a parking place. And if $40 opens up a few more parking places for our residents, that would be fine. I don't see why we don't have $40, would be my suggestion. I don't know about how the rest of the board would feel.
Discussion, anybody? Anybody else?
I hate raising fees.
I
I know
second
you
that.
all know that.
That's a surprise.
So,
It's revenue to the town. I mean,
Yes, I
it's
know,
a
but-
fee, but it's a fee, for folks that come, and they're wonderful if they come. They have great opportunities at our beaches, but it's an important source of revenue. We have a lot of costs coming up.
Anybody else?
Mike,
I think $40.
there is a question.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Diane, I didn't see it.
Excessive? For a
Hey,
day at the
Bill.
beach?
it is for Kennebunkport. It's
That's
not for
not-
Boston.
I'm okay with 30.
Whoa, for visitors to Kennebunkport, not for residents, obviously.
residents.
Our residents are
Yeah, I know,
$10
I know.
all the time, so I absolutely.
Buy your hot dogs and stuff.
Diane Franz, Kennebunkport. One of the things that I'm wondering is whether or not the people that own homes along the water, we've heard from some of the people that are ticketing, that they actually park their cars along
Correct.
in those parking spaces. And then if they have guests coming, or if somebody calls and says, can I park at your place? They allow them to come in there. So I don't care, $10 for a resident parking for us is fine. But I'm wondering if we're anticipating income that may just not come to fruition because of the tactics that are being used there, probably on a daily basis.
They've been doing that for years, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some may,
Right.
I don't know that it's much
not
worse than what it's
discussed.
always.
So what happens to somebody who's paid $40 and then comes down and can't find a parking space?
Well, what
They get
happens
the
to a
park-
resident that pays theirs and comes there,
Same
happens all the time. I mean, the
We get
residents.
up like at
Re-
7
yeah,
o'clock, 6 o'clock in the
residents,
morning to get
it's-
down there.
Well,
but,
this may provide a
okay.
few more spaces for you.
Okay.
Someone may
First come,
decide-
first
yeah.
serve.
So it
that's-
has been
yeah.
a problem all along?
It's
yeah.
been a
People-
known issue all
Known
along.
issue.
Yeah, really
Okay.
has.
Yeah, it has.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bill? No, you gotta do it from up there. You gotta get up.
You can, but the mic can't, the folks at home
I
can't hear
think it
you.
would be good to break down what each category is. And how much, if I go over there and park there and don't have a sticker, how much do the police charge me for that?
65, I want to raise that to 75. But 65 currently, that's going to be my next suggestion, and
Well-
that goes to 75.
Okay. Well, I just think to me, I would like to look at each one of those categories and see which one brings the most money in and work
The
from
most
there. And
money-
I
The
agree
most
with
money is the
Sheila.
daily. I
Is
mean,
the-
Huh?
the most money is the daily.
The
That's-
daily?
Oh, sure, that's
Oh, yeah.
the largest volume.
Okay.
And that's the money.
And they come
And they
into
get
town
it at
hall
the
and
kiosk.
buy
I
it.
mean, you don't get your ticket and then not find a place to park. You park and then you go get your ticket. So it's,
the kiosk,
so
Bill.
so
Oh,
the
out of the
kiosk
kiosk,
now is
okay.
how we do it. So, but that was an issue and it was a pain, but that they're taking.
Well, Boston, if you go in, all you can get on their meters is 2 hours. And
Yeah.
if it goes over 2 hours, it's $90.
Right. We're
Plus
cheap.
you paid. So it's not probably a pretty good deal.
I think it's a great deal. And again, you know, this
Thanks,
is, these are our source of revenue. Let's have it be a source of revenue.
Okay, so, motion time then.
I would like to move that we raise the daily parking from $30 to $40
For non-resident,
for
non-taxpayer.
non-resident.
Well, right now it's 25.
Right
No,
now,
it's
it's 30.
It's 30.
It was 30 and
That's the
23, and we're
No, 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 we
proposing
had-
keeping it
yeah.
at 30.
We-
Yeah, we
That-
raised it
That was
year.
last year. That's the memo you're looking at, Sheila.
Oh,
That-
am I?
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah, we were just showing you that was
How we made the motion.
the motion that was made last year,
Yeah,
Okay,
to raise it to $30.
okay.
So that was last year's $30?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
raised it. to
What
30.
you did was you voted last year to raise the daily to 30 effective 2023,
Okay.
and to raise the resident to 10 effective 2024.
Because we had already issued,
Okay,
So many,
so
yeah.
I don't have a problem.
So you want to go to
Yeah.
40?
I want to go to 40 from 30.
30.
Exactly.
I would say that you'll probably see a decrease in the number of permits sold. And so it depends on what your goal is.
Well, we'll see where the balance is. We can always lower it next year if we want to welcome more people.
How
I mean,
about-
that's,
How about 35?
do I hear 3750?
Well, how about we,
32.50.
how about we let it roll one more year and we give you the raise on the parking fees? Because there's quite a few parking fees. So if we get the raise on the parking fees, but we let the weekly rate go, or we give you a raise on the, well, how about we take a raise on the weekly rate? Well,
we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? John has made a motion, so,
I think we're struggling.
yeah.
What was your motion, John?
To raise the daily non-resident rate from $30 to $40. Not hearing a second, I will withdraw the motion.
Okay. So the weekly,
I think it's a shame you're losing money, but that's fine.
the weekly proposed is to go from $100 to $125. Do I have-
That I,
Correct.
see, that's good.
Okay, you want to make a motion?
I don't, do we need to? We do need to, because that is a
Yeah,
change.
we do.
And the non-resident seasonal is going to go to 250?
250, yeah?
I can do that.
Okay, you're going to make a motion, Sheila?
I'll make a motion to change the resident fee from $5 to $10.
That's already been done.
Right, that's right, sorry. To keep it at $10 then. To do the daily continue it at 30. I would go to 35 if anybody wants to do that.
You can't do- You could make a motion, you could make a motion to go to 35.
No, I'm going to stay at 30.
Oh, come
I'm
on,
gonna
go to
stay at
35.
And then the non-resident, 125, non-resident weekly, 125, non-resident seasonal, 250.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, 5-0.
Hell, vote for it.
So let me just recap. We're already at $10 for the seasonal, for the residents.
Resident.
No, actually,
And
that's going to be new, isn't it?
No,
Well,
we're
already at it, but it'll be
Voted
new.
No, we
last
already,
year.
we already passed it.
Exactly.
What I meant.
Exactly.
What I meant, yeah.
Good.
So the $30, we're gonna stay $30 for the, daily for the non-taxpayer, non-resident. And we're going to $125 and $250 for the weekly and the seasonal for non-resident, or for non-taxpayer. Okay,
Thank you.
that was all passed. Okay, thanks. Okay, next, accept a $50 donation from an anonymous donor towards the nurse's general account.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All those in favor? Yep. Accept a very generous $800 donation from the Kennebunkport Residents Association, $400 towards the general needs account and $400 towards the fuel account.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Gratefully.
Aye. Good, thank you. Very generous, everybody.
Yes.
Other business, Mary Beth.
Yeah, I have a couple things. One is, I know when we did the bus tour, which, again, I
You like the bus
I
tour,
do
don't
like the bus tour. I don't know if people are counting how many times I said bus tour at this meeting, but I'm sure it's in the double digits.
14.
Yeah,
14.
14. But we spent so much time with the grace of Lori and the chiefs, and we got a lot of information and Chris. I would just recommend that maybe the board goes to the beach together, because I think it would be just good for all of our eyes to see, especially the West End where they had the flooding, just collectively. We can all sort of see, and any resident that wants to come with us, and then also see what happened to the beach this time, because I think it is,
Yeah.
I think it's significant.
Well, we've walked it, but, yeah, but that's,
I think it's a
Yes.
collective
Yeah,
thing, because
why
we
not?
sort of,
Sure.
it's a good to just all have a common
Yep.
understanding. And the second thing, hear me out, so I'll start there. And I'm not meaning this to be something that's accepted. I'm meaning this as a point of discussion, because I myself have been struggling with something, and I've thought about this a lot, and I'm trying to square it off in my mind. And I mentioned it last week when we had the climate initiative. I think I made the statement about, I've been thinking about this as well with LD 2003. So, and you heard me a little bit with the water runoff. So again, all that sort of comes with, we've heard from people in the town that are concerned about land for future. And we've heard from people about too much development. We've heard from people about green space, and I know the Conservation Trust plays a huge role in that part, so I'll just really address the first two. So I didn't know is, as we're thinking through this, and we only have limited amount of town land. So what I didn't know is, I'm going to use people, some of the words that you hear people that refer in the climate committee about, like carbon credits. So do we actually do some land credits? Do we take some of our town land and say for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, that we don't touch this stuff? And, unless we need municipality. And it doesn't need to be all the town land. It can just be maybe some parcels. I didn't know if there was a need for us to put that forward to the voters, or if we're good with, the way we're progressing through the land, or, the development need. I'm just cautioning us to maybe think, and again, I left it to the end because I want us to maybe think about it, and is there better ideas, or are there different ideas for us to sort of address? I'm just trying to knit it all together, and it feels a little funny to me that 1 week we're talking about limiting the impact of literally humans in this area, and then the next week we're trying to find the need, what the state has asked us to do. Which
who's
is provide
talking
more.
about limiting humans? I thought,
No, the impact of humans, just the general
well,
impact.
are you talking about private property or town property?
So this specifically the only thing we can talk about is town property.
Exactly.
Right, so do we take, 2 spots of our town property and say, we're not gonna touch it for 5 years? I'm not saying that that's the proposal.
We haven't touched a lot of it for 50 years.
Right,
So,
but I think
like-
I just wanted to, maybe there's something that we could help some of our residents when we're going through these proposals on LD 2003, we can say, look we can bring that up, we haven't touched land. I don't know
Well,
if
I
you
don't
guys are
know.
struggling.
I
but
still don't understand what you're trying to get. I'm trying to understand,
Yeah.
and I'm just not getting it yet.
Yeah, I can appreciate
So,
that, because I
yeah.
can barely understand myself at this point. But I think what I'm trying to do is, last week we talked about climate impact. And in my mind, I break that down into limiting impact on our environment, right?
Yeah, but,
So-
yeah, that's true, but I mean, you can't limit private property on what
No,
people
no,
do
no.
with the property. So,
Right.
it's the town.
Municipal
You're talking municipal only.
property.
Yeah.
I'm only talking about what we could do from a town perspective, and to your point, Alan, and yours is exactly right. The only thing we can talk and address to is town property, because LD 2003 and stuff will set in
Right.
stone what's gonna happen to our private property here, or what could be happening to our private property. So I just wanted to, just like we had the discussion about water runoff, I just think that this is something for the select board, because we're the only ones really thinking about this, that we should be, with the town and the rest of the department heads. I think we just need, is there something we need to do? I'm just putting it out there. We don't need to talk about it now, but I'd like to at least have the board thinking about it, and as if there is something that we need to do, that we should address it.
Fair enough, fair enough.
So, thank you.
John?
Nothing, thank you.
Alan?
Hey, I have something.
All right,
I want to talk about the Kennebunk River for a minute.
yeah.
We all know what happened the last storm. Big surges, big tides. It's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. And I would like us to look into some sort of floodgate or barrier, something to keep the surge and the water at bay. Because if we don't, I mean, it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen some more after it happens again. And I know that people aren't going to stand for it. They're either going to move away, sell their businesses, because they can't keep fixing these buildings.
So, and I agree with you, okay, so you, John and I have been big proponents of that, as through the climate stuff.
But I'd like to
I'd like to suggest to you that, as a starter, that you go and take a look at the work that the University of Maine folks did for us.
UNE.
Was it UNE?
UNE.
You know,
No, it
sorry.
was you.
Oh, it's UMaine?
Yeah, I thought it was UMaine,
It
yeah.
was Black Bears who
Black
did that
Bears,
work.
Black Bears. So, so that they did it about 2 years ago for us, and they did the analysis of exactly what you're talking about, a breaker at the entrance to the harbor, breaker up in the harbor, up the river, I didn't mean harbor, but up the river, and what we can do to mitigate things downtown to protect businesses, et cetera, et cetera. They first did all the analysis on part one, and then on part two, they did the recommendations. And if you take a look at that, it's only like, one of them is, the first one is like 12 minutes, 15 minutes. The second one is 12 minutes, 15 minutes. And they are really excellent at what they presented. So it'll give you the ideas. However, it comes with big dollars.
Oh, yeah.
Big dollar. It's nothing, the problem is, it's, I wouldn't say nothing. It's something that an individual town is unlikely to be able to afford.
Can't
Well,
afford.
this is
Yeah.
what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
What I want to see is, why can't we try to work with Kennebunk? They have the same problems we have. Lower Village is getting flooded out. Downtown, our downtown's getting flooded out.
Well, this
We're
applies,
going to lose half of
yeah,
Ocean Avenue if we don't do something.
It's going to be state and federal funds.
yeah,
It's
it's
not
state
gonna
and
be
federal
built
funds.
Any other way.
But take
there-
a look, because they
can't
included Kennebunk in the analysis,
Yeah.
so.
And just to let you know, I did talk to Kennebunk about this idea. And I sent them the UMaine students' presentation. And I think that there are people on that side of the river who are willing to look at this. Last Friday, when we met with Woodard and Kerr, and one of the issues I talked to them about was this tidal gate, and I had sent them the UMaine student video. And so one of the issues is the UMaine students had talked about doing it right past the jetty. And there is an issue with tidal water that comes up behind that
Right,
on the Kennebunk side.
it'll wash around
It
it.
walks
Exactly.
around.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah,
It's got to be.
being
further
a
out.
water guy, I figured you would. And
Yeah.
so, so I don't know how to put in a tidal gate. And so I did talk to Woodard and Curran, and I said, and they're a national engineering firm. And I said, this is what we're talking about, and, you know, we need somebody to do an analysis, to just tell us how much this potentially could cost. Could this actually work at this location? What would be the pros and cons of it? And so they have not done anything of that nature, and so he's reaching out to the California coast and others to see if somebody in Woodard and Curran elsewhere has done that kind of work. Because that's the first step to me, is I need someone to help us through that process.
Get to the Netherlands. That would be the-
But
Well-
if you get a chance, take a look at it, though. It's really a good thing to look at.
It's
However,
gonna change the town if we
Yeah.
don't do something.
No,
We
no.
have to start to do something.
John and I
We
have been,
start.
the advocates of that. We agree with 100%, 100%. The problem is, it ain't gonna happen within the next 5 years.
Oh, I
you know,
understand that,
so-
but if we don't start to work on this, it's never gonna happen.
Yeah. So
And
the,
you're gonna lose that town. You're gonna lose the downtown. You know it, and I know it.
I know it, I know
We're
it.
gonna lose half of Ocean Avenue from the colony to the
We are.
downtown port.
Yeah, I agree.
And then what do you have left? So this is
So we got,
something
we
that
got a
needs
lot
to
of
be
spot,
taken care of.
yeah, I agree.
Some one way or another, and I was hoping that, thank you, Laurie, for talking to the town manager, but it's really, it's scary, actually.
Yeah, dikes probably wouldn't help, but something's gotta work somewhere along the way.
I mean, my problem is I just don't know how much it costs.
costs
That
is it?
study
Oh.
to even, not to
Yeah,
build it, but
just
to
the
just
study.
study it. And so, and Kennebunk actually sent me an email today saying, so are you really interested in this? And I said, yes, I just don't know how much it costs. And so that's what we need to find. And if anybody has ideas of partners,
Do we have anybody on the coast, on the East Coast that has done this?
Well, New Bedford has a floodgate, and they put it in started in 1960, went to 1965 before it was completed. And it was $16 million then, but it's huge. I mean, it covers the whole interior of the harbor. It's not just the gate, it's the whole thing. It is a gate, they shut the gate out, but there was a big barrier on both sides, so they would take up to a 16-foot surge in a extremely high tide. It's worked up until this last storm. But that was, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So it worked for them. Bill, you have a question or an answer? Maybe you have an answer for all this.
I got two things, and I've never been in this meeting before, but I want to tell you that I've gone through the New Bedford one. It's well done, it's great, and it has worked. But the other thing I wanted to say, it's the first time I've been in here, I want to thank you all for what you do.
Thank you.
And you do a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin has her hand raised.
Robin?
Do you consult the Army Corps of Engineers for things like this? It seems like that's sort of their arena. Do they have any input that we could utilize without great expense?
Nothing is free, can tell you
Yeah, but
that.
I think-
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but we have used them.
The Army Corps did both sides
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
opening?
yeah.
They've been working Colony Beach as
Yeah.
well, so that's.
We've used them, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Robin.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's all I have.
Okay.
That's enough, isn't it?
Sheila?
I have nothing, I'm good.
I have nothing, but I think Lori may have something.
yeah, so one item is I wanted to make the board aware. You'll remember that the state passed a tax stabilization law that took effect in 2023 for the fiscal year 2024. And if you were over the age of 65 and applied, your taxes would be frozen.
Yeah.
And the state would make up the delta difference between that. And so, then the law was repealed, so we've had a 1 year. And what we were asked to do and how it actually worked in the system and financially is that when we went to commit taxes, we committed the full amount. And behind the scenes, it recognized that difference between what the eligible party paid the previous year and what the new bill would be. And it committed that delta to a third party, the state of Maine. Okay? So that's an actual tax commitment owed to the town. And so the state of Maine asked everyone, all the municipalities, to submit their reimbursements, and they had budgeted $15 million in payments. And so what they received for reimbursements was $26,500,000. So they sent out an email to us last Thursday, telling us, and in the documentation they sent all municipalities on how to implement the tax stabilization program, it said that the state would reimburse 100%. So the language they're using now is up to 100%. And
As opposed to 110%.
they are reviewing, so what they've reimbursed is 56% to all municipalities. And they are in hopes that the state will find additional funds before the end of the fiscal year to reimburse us at 100%. So for us, we submitted a reimbursement of $90,963.99. We are going to receive a check for $53,069, and so we'll have just under $38,000 uncollected unless the state finds money. And if they do, then we'll be at 100%, and if they don't, then our collections will be under by that.
$10 up on the parking fee. We'll
Yeah,
pay for
I
that.
was just gonna say, can we go
Just
back,
saying.
can we go back and revisit the parking?
So I just wanted to make you aware of that. The other item is that we have been looking at the roads that need design in terms of how to deal with flooding, similar to what we did on the Pier Road Causeway, as well as Ocean Avenue, the Wanby Beach. And so we are looking at both the next two projects being Head of the Harbor on Pier Road and probably Dyke Road. Because Head of the Harbor Pier Road, it is a one-way access, and we are spending money down at the other end of Pier Road on the causeway to elevate it. We believe that the Pier Road project makes sense to move forward with engineering on. There is a DOT grant called the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund, and grant applications are due at the end of next week. I've been working with Southern Maine Planning as well as our engineers on submitting an application. The highest grant award for scope and design is $50,000, but it would pay for half of the cost on the design on the Head of the Harbor end of Pier Road. And so I am looking for your support and authorization to go forward and submit an application for that.
You got it.
Should we,
Make
do
a
we
motion.
vote, or do we?
Yeah.
I'd like to move that we support Lori's pursuing a $50,000 grant.
For the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? All right, 5-0. Got our support.
That's all I got.
Warrant? Warrant?
Motion to approve the warrants?
Second?
All those in favor? All right.
Motion
And
to,
motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
For staying the course.